my e-newsletters, then you don't need to worry about it. By the way, I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and all of those. The only thing is that on Facebook, they limit how many people you can be friends with, unfortunately. So my regular page is full, but my fan page, if you like that, then I interact with that page the same way. So anyway, are we, how far out are we? Good to go? Okay. Is it streaming right now? Oh, okay. I could have like 5 or 6 takes of this then. Okay, cool. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon yet? Good morning. I'm Norm Stockton, and welcome to Bass Pyrotechnics to Art. Is that what this is called? Welcome to rehearsal. Yeah, this is sort of, well, very deliberately, it's after the other sessions that we've already had together. Hopefully you've been in those other sessions if you're a bass player, because it gives context for everything we're going to be talking about. This is sort of the icing on the cake. Bass playing is really, first and foremost, in an ensemble setting, it's about groove, it's about playing what's appropriate and serving as infrastructure for the band. Yeah, suffice it to say that if you just look at this class on its own, then this is all the stuff that's going to get you fired. But the bass is an amazing instrument for a whole variety of other applications as well. And if you're not familiar with people like Michael Manring, I definitely encourage you to go and check out some of his iTunes stuff. Amazing solo bass player, and does just breathtaking, beautiful music that'll make you tear up. And the thing that I want to really encourage you in with this is letting the music drive the technique and not the other way around. When it sounds like the song was written around a certain technique, you can tell right away. And it doesn't have that same emotional component to it, and it just generally feels like, okay, I'm watching like a gymnastics routine, you know, or I'm listening to a gymnastics routine. You want to make it where the music it's like, okay, I'm making decisions about technique based upon what sound would best serve the music at this point, kind of thing. There's a, should I turn on? Oops. This is plugged into the wrong thing. Yeah, there's an actual DI. Can you mute that for a second? For those of you who are joining us online, we'll be right back. Okay, go back. Is that working? Perfect. And we're back. So for those of you who saw the jam session yesterday with Greg Bissonette, I played this during that, but let me just do it again just really quickly to set this up. So this is, well, I'll do a little something leading into my solo version of the Star Spangled Banner. Thank you very much. Hey, let's pray real quick. Heavenly Father, thanks for this time, and thanks for all the gifts that are represented in this room and all the ministries that are represented here, Lord. We are grateful that you've allowed us to be involved in directing the eyes of the church to you, and just continue to pray that you would help us to be wise and diligent stewards and just faithful with what you've given us, Lord, and help us to use our talents for your glory. So thanks for this time. In Christ's name, amen. So in terms of the modern bass bag, technique-wise, one of the techniques that's very prevalent is slap bass. And, just this overall approach to the instrument, which is very different sonically than fingerstyle, but basically involves a light slapping of the string, usually with your thumb. Now, some of you may remember back in the day Louis Johnson from the Brothers Johnson. He was one of the founding fathers of this technique on the slap bass, on the electric bass. And you may recall that his range of motion was point of impact, point of recoil. It's like whackety, whackety, whack, And for most mere mortals, you have problems for a variety of reasons when you do that. Not the least of which is, what happens to your accuracy when your attack starts out here? Most of us are going to be hitting all sorts of strings that we're not trying to hit, right? The thing about slapping, I'm going to tie this together with a couple of things. Some of you may notice when I play slap bass that my thumb is over the fingerboard like this, in a way that's very guitar player-ish, right? Guitar player-esque, and sort of frowned upon for fingerstyle playing. But when you're doing the slap thing, check it out. Even if I'm super accurate, if I just hit the string I'm trying to hit, you have other strings that are sympathetically resonating because it's a resonant body, right? You got this thing kind of going a little bit. So you have to mute the strings however you can mute them. And my normal muting technique involves my thumb coming down to some of these other strings. And if you have questions on that, my Volume 1 DVD covers this extensively. But suffice to say that it involves a thumb shift when you're playing some of the higher strings. When you're slapping, obviously your thumb isn't in a position to do that. So I bring my fretting thumb over the top. And Louis Johnson actually frets notes that way, so there's all sorts of different things you can do. But suffice it to say that the more accurate you can be with your thumb, the less the muting burden is on your left hand, right? If you're hitting all sorts of adjacent notes, then that's making it where your left hand's really working hard to mute. But my range of motion is pretty much right about here, right? So it's very easy for me to just hit the string I'm trying to hit. Not to mention the fact that if you're starting your attack out here, chances are you are bumming out your sound people. Because, you don't need to hit the strings that hard. As a matter of fact, what you really want to cultivate is a feel for how softly you can hit the string and still get the tone. It doesn't require this. And as a matter of fact, that makes it really hard to sit in the mix. Much better off lightly tapping it and just, okay, I only need to hit it that hard. You don't need to hit it that hard. And as a matter of fact, with your B string, hit it even softer because it's a big string. If you're doing this, that's like Norm's last day on the gig, So what you want to do is develop your technique slap-wise to where it's like any other technique. Many of us, it's like when we're slapping, it's like, oh, I can only do like octave-based sorts of ideas. Because this is just the way that it lays on the instrument, or minor pentatonic. And the slap technique, or any of these techniques, if you work on them like with your scales, with your modes, I'm doing staggered thirds like from the Grooving DVDs. Mixolydian. So when you start working on scale types of ideas, then that allows you to employ this technique in a linear fashion if you need to, There's a song on my Pondering the Sushi CD, the hidden bonus track at the end of the CD. It's called Veggie Soup, and that A section starts out second time through, it goes. Et cetera, et cetera. It's a much more linear approach to the technique. And so if you work on your scales, work on your modes that way, you're actually kind of killing two birds with one stone as well, because you can be working on your harmony and your fretboard knowledge in addition to working on the technique, But by the way, are slap and funk synonymous terms? What's the difference between slap and funk? There you go. Slap is a technique, funk is a style of music. By the way, how many of you have been in my clinics before? Before today? Oh, okay. I talk about that a bunch. So I'm just, hopefully that's retention from something we've covered. Yeah. Some of the funkiest bass lines you'll ever hear are fingerstyle lines on old James Brown records. And some of the unfunkiest stuff you'll ever hear is slap stuff at the music industry trade shows. Where it's like the Makita attachment, So, but you want to develop the technique like any other, to where you could play whatever the line requires. If you're familiar, or I hope you're familiar with Marcus Miller's playing, amazing, amazing bass player. If you're looking to learn how to develop your slap technique, I wholeheartedly encourage you to check out Marcus Miller. He's the guy. There are other people that slap, and I'm a big fan of Victor Wooten and everybody else, but Marcus is the guy in terms of just viciously funky slap stuff. And his version of Teen Town is jaw-dropping. And he's doing a very linear type of playing, and it's very uncommon to hear the slap technique employed in that manner, but it's really kind of refreshing and inspiring to hear. So yeah, so that's the slap, and then there's the pop, right? Which is basically just getting your finger underneath the string. And you want to kind of work on the dynamic range to make sure that one's not significantly louder or quieter than the other. And in that, keeping with that whole linear thing, work on slapping and popping on the same note, and work on your scales, your modes. You can start working on your accuracy with the string skipping. Staggered thirds. All right? By the way, just talking about the gear real quick, all of my basses that I use for slapping have this thing, I call it a slap ramp. It's basically, some of you think, it's like you have approached me, oh, is this like some sort of a transducer system, pickup? No, those are actually chopsticks. That's sushi up there. It's this thin sheet of wenge basically reduces the distance between the body and the string. I have bony fingers, and if I get too much of my finger underneath the string, I get stuck, which is groovicidal, right? So these make it where I only get a little bit of my finger underneath the string, so it helps me quite a bit. But, so yeah, basically slapping and popping on the same string. Now, some of the more like what Victor Wooten has been doing over the years. I mean, he's written a couple of new chapters in the modern bass vocabulary, right? And Victor does a lot of the double thumbing stuff. Double thumbing is basically it's where you're slapping, and then on the upstroke, you're doing this with the string, so it's like you're getting 2 attacks per trip. Now, some of the ways that I employ that, or that example just a little while ago. I prefer to use it just as a little dash of spice as opposed to a primary component. It's like a recipe, Garlic salt is great. If the whole dish is garlic salt, it's less pleasant, right? Much better when it's a little accent to the main course. But in terms of developing this technique, there's no way around it. It's very uncomfortable at the beginning having a round wound string grinding on that uncalloused part of the top of your thumb. And in many ways, I'm always cautioning people that the no pain, no gain approach to wood shedding does not apply to bass, because in terms of your wrists and your arms, you can cause yourself major damage if you don't warm up properly, and if you have pains and you ignore them. So in terms of that, I definitely recommend, if you have aches or in your limbs, then stop for a second, kind of reposition and see if there's a way that ergonomically you can make sure that you're not hurting yourself. In terms of calluses and in terms of developing a thicker skin here, no pain, no gain. You just have to do it. So I recommend, don't even plug in, just have your bass there on the couch as you're watching TV and just get used to this motion right here. And I actually keep a little bit of my thumbnail there so that the upstroke has an attack too. It's a different attack than the downstroke, but it's fairly easy to keep the dynamic level the same between them, And after a little while, just kind of work on the different strings. Once this kind of starts coming together, then it's time to turn on the metronome and work on your scales. Once you do that, it's not that hard to add a single pop. So it's like, on the Star Spangled Banner, I use that with the. So it's basically harder to do that slower. But basically, yeah. Once that comes together, then start working on your scales. Lydian. Once that comes together, it's not that hard to add a second pop. So it's down, up, pop, pop. I use my index finger and my middle finger. So, oh, I'm supposed to be doing double pops, huh? Again, it's easier to do faster than slow. But this is just the mechanics. Getting the mechanics together to where you can make music out of it. If you are out on the gig and you're like, yeah, here we go, man, solo time. Yeah, it's like a... it's like, don't do your scales, work on making music with it, okay? So, I've never really sought out, as much of a fan as I am of Victor Wooten, I've never really sought to try to copy any of his stuff, because Victor already does Victor real well, doesn't he? He doesn't need me to try to do a bad impression of Victor. And that's my encouragement to you, by the way, is God has uniquely equipped each of us for our calling. He's equipped me to do things that you're not able to do. He's equipped you to do things that I'm not able to do, that you're not able to do. And it's like, but we all are uniquely equipped for our fields of ministry and influence. So you don't need to feel beat up about anything. And I really want to encourage you to develop your technique and certainly take influence from players that inspire you, but don't become a clone of the player that inspires you. It's amazing how many people, maybe less so these days, but man, not too many years ago, if you walked around the NAMM show, the Music Industry Trade Show, it was amazing how many people you'd walk by. It's like, man, that person has woodshedded a lot, and that person sounds just like Jocko. It's really amazing. The only problem is Jocko already did the Jocko thing really, really well. It's so much cooler when it's like you hear somebody playing, it's like, you know, I can tell that this person listened to so-and-so and so-and-so, but they have their own thing going. And in the body of Christ, how much more relevant is that, right? Because we're all individuals, uniquely created, amen? So in terms of the technique, I don't generally spend a bunch of time teaching my licks because I think you can, once you have the mechanics together, you can come up with your own licks that are cooler. But some of the different ways that I apply that down, up, plop, pop is that way that I was telling you about earlier where it's like, okay, let's see. One, if I'm doing a A major 7, 1, 3, 7, right? 1, 3, 7, or 1, 3, 5, 7, but I can't play the third and the fifth at the same time. So if I just bail on the fifth, 1, 3, 7, let's see if I go. So if I speed that up, I can kind of create this sort of a, well, I was going to say sheet of sound. That's kind of a John Coltraneism, but it's sort of my version of a sheet of sound. Two chord. I can add the 7. If I wanted to come up here, let me take it a little higher register so it has a little more clarity. D minor 7, 1, flat 3, flat 7, right? D minor major 7. Back to the minor 7. Dominant 7. Right? So there's all sorts of different ways that you can apply this technique. But again, the subtlety thing is huge, and you want to apply it sparingly. You don't want to be that guy or girl in the worship environment having people go, you know, the fusion gig is down the street. Don't try to do this in a Hillsong tune. Please let the record state that I warned you against that. The tap technique. There's a bunch of different ways that people do that, you know, and you're probably familiar with the Van Halen approach, you know. You're not really functioning much as a bass player when you do that, by the way, right? You know, there's not a lot of low end happening, but there's a couple of other ways that I employ it. Or that sort of flailing thing, you know, where it's like, which basically, it's all just applying the technique to the music. So I'm thinking, okay, let's see. Here's a 1, a 5, a 9, and a major third up on top, right? So it's like a add 2 chord, right? If I play those two with these fingers and these two notes with these fingers. Now, the fastest any single finger is moving is that fast. Minor 9, like a sus. There's my 4, right? But again, it's basically just a percussive tapping of the note to the fingerboard. And you want to fret the note percussively as well. and try to only hit the string you're trying to hit, and then mute the rest, right? So, and just keeping the dynamic level that, similar between your right hand and your left hand. So it's not like, whatever, I can't even do spent so many years trying not to do that. But suffice it to say that you're, now some of you may be thinking, okay, tapping thing's fun, but zero applicability to anything that I do. That may be. Check it out though. Here's that worship chorus, end of the song, last chorus coming through, and it's like that, I'll do the guitar part, kind of a. Here comes the last note. This is kind of cymbals, and so you're down here as a bass player doing this, right? Getting that low D, getting the subs to kick in a little bit, note that's maybe felt more than heard. Now, I may be thinking, okay, so we're hanging on this 4 chord. Man, it'd be cool to be able to have the 9th ringing out on top of this, just to give a little bit of tension, right? The note I want to hit is right there. Now, I could try thumb position. I can't reach that note, okay? But so it's like a. What am I doing there? I'm basically using the tap technique with some vibrato. Now, if I'm in a worship environment, I'm going to probably not put my foot on the wedge and go, You kind of want to be subtle with it, so, I may kind of lean back to the drummer, It's really easy to make that sound like this. So again, you want to work on familiarity with the instrument to where you know exactly how much pressure to put and how much vibrato you can give it before it pulls it off the neck and all that thing, But that's the slap technique employed musically in a worship environment. And it doesn't even need to be something where people are aware that you're doing that, but you're adding a harmonic little dash of spice to that. Artificial harmonics. I do those. Now, check it out. Natural harmonics so basically, there are just the physics of the instrument. There are natural harmonics all over the fingerboard, and certain players have had an encyclopedic knowledge of those notes and can apply them on the fly. They're not laid out anything like the fretted notes, and so that's quite a task. For me, I much prefer to employ artificial harmonics, which create the physics necessary to get those tones artificially. So, in other words, if here's my D, I pick the midpoint between the fretted note and the bridge saddle, and lightly rest my finger on the string and then pluck behind it. Now, if I go too far in either direction, I'm going to lose that note. Right? So there's my note. So work on your scales. So having that range tonally and in terms of register on the bass is a fun thing to have. At the end of that song again, it's like a... Now, if I was doing that, having that note ringing, you still want to function as a bass player, so you need to end with that, right? Having that low D. Now, again, this is something that could kind of be attention grabbing, so again, look back at your drummer and kind of, or you could do that. Oh, there you go. Operator error. I'm giving you guys lots of edit points for this. Yeah, so, that's artificial harmonics and the tap technique applied in a worship environment subtly. And you can come up with all sorts of different ways. And again, it's not so, hey, I used 7 advanced techniques in the worship set this morning. God must be pleased, Again, let the music drive it. But I'm just saying that in terms of these techniques, they don't need to always be employed in this fusion-ish kind of a bass solo way. They're all different colors on the canvas, and they tend to distract and not work as well when they're not applied with subtlety and sensitivity to the musical context. But if you're applying them with those things in mind, then it can be a nice little contribution to the melodic and the harmonic aspect of the music. Questions on any of that? Questions on anything we've covered? Yes, you first and then you.
So when you did the artificial harmonic there, were you fully fretting or not?
When I was, the question is, when I was doing the artificial harmonic, was I fretting the string fully? And yes, absolutely yes. So you're fretting the note just like you would regularly. There's another edit point. Yeah, you're fretting the note just like regularly, but instead of plucking it, you're lightly resting your finger on the string and doing that. Yeah, so you can kind of mess with that on your own bass. Fret a note up here, try to find the midpoint. Now, some people, I think Jocko used his thumb, and some other people have different techniques for that. To me, I'm much more accurate. I feel much more comfortable doing it with my index finger. Yes. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I still can't hear. I'm so. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about vibrato, especially the crossing the frets?
Vibrato, yeah. In the earlier sessions, I was talking about the spice, all the things in terms of the phrasing to help the line talk. Because, and I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here because I think this is really hugely important. I've been thinking about this quite a bit because what I've been discovering is that the music that stays on my playlist tends to be the stuff that moves me on an emotional level. It's almost never the stuff that moves me on an intellectual level. Where it's like, sometimes you hear something where it's like, wow, that's just crazy difficult, and man, that's impressive. So anyway, and then you kind of move on, But the stuff that tends to stay on my playlist is the stuff that when I hear it, it makes me want to jump up and down, or it makes me want to cry, or it makes me want to, shout. It's stuff that moves my heart. And I see some of you nodding, like you kind of, that resonates with you too, I think that's the thing about music that you really want to, I want to encourage you to lean into that. And again, it's not emotional manipulation, but what it is conveying emotion on your instrument, especially in a worship environment. That's our goal, to help convey the song. If the song is making a statement, you want to musically support that. If it's this heart cry, you want to convey that emotionally. So there's all these techniques in terms of phrasing that sort of have a lot of similarities to speech. If I really emphasize every syllable, I'm saying something different than if I emphasize every syllable or don't emphasize every syllable, kind of thing, right? So all of these things kind of help it convey something on an emotional level. Vibrato is one of those things. Now, there's a couple of different approaches that I use for vibrato, and some of them work better in certain contexts than others. The side-to-side thing, I don't use that a bunch because on a fretted instrument, you really need to lay into that pretty hard in order to get that to be discernible. Whereas on a fretless instrument, that's really pretty easy to do. You get that moi factor. But for me, I tend to do, when I'm doing regular vibrato, I tend to do more of this thing. Now, you can make it real nervous, or you can make it really subtle. And, emulate vocalists. You don't want to overuse it, but especially if you're sustaining a line, especially if you're doing something up the neck that's a little bit more melodic, it's a real nice thing. For those of you who are in the earlier session, you probably remember the gentleman who came up and was playing the bass line, and then he started doing the slide and adding a little bit of vibrato up on top, It's like, or whatever it was, He wasn't doing Come Together, but whatever. But yeah, it suddenly said something it communicated something different, right? So vibrato is a really cool thing. The vibrato that kind of crosses the fret, it's what I refer to as the Abe after Abe Laboriel, because he uses this a bunch. It's basically fretting the note and then letting the vibrato, a lot of times it's kind of just over that one fret, but you can make it, In funk, a lot of times, one of the harmonic idioms is that blurring of the lines between minor and major, right? So a lot of times in funk, you've got the, it's like I don't have the plucking technique of a funk guitar player, but suffice it to say that there's this thing going, where it's like, okay, there's my major third, there's my minor third. Which one is it? Well, it's kind of both. So when you're doing that sort of thing, that really suits that whole approach to vibrato really well, because you could just do the minor third and do the vibrato up to the major third. And it's really emphasizing that fact that, well, it's kind of minor, it's kind of major, it's kind of both. If you want to incorporate a funk a little dash of spice into a groove, one of the easiest things you can do is throw in that sort of phrasing and introduce that minor and third and major third thing. I wish I had another take at that. I could probably say that more eloquently, but yeah. So with the vibrato thing, what you want to also make sure of is that when you're doing vibrato on the highest string, it's really easy to have this happen when you pull it off the neck. So that, again, is where familiarity with the instrument comes in, and you kind of develop a feel for, okay, well, first of all, my vibrato, I'm going to probably do it mostly pushing up instead of pulling down, because it's really easy to do that. That technique we used earlier, you can actually get a little bit of a violinish, sort of a cello-ish bow approach, or bow sound. As it grinds down the frets. But, it's a nice thing to be able to apply once in a while, too. How many of you do solo bass arranging? I really encourage you to do so, even if you don't have any aspirations to doing, coffee house gigs or whatever. Solo bass arranging, I think, is one of the most educational things, beneficial things you can do educationally on the bass, because it forces you to look at the rhythmic, harmonic, and melodic aspects of the music at the same time. And it's really not that hard. You can make it something very virtuosic, or you can make it something, frankly, Jocko's version of America. It's melody and bass notes. And you can put it in a key that takes maximum advantage of the open strings. So it's like. whatever, But you can pick your favorite worship song and just kind of, okay, well, how can I use open strings and play the melody, There's, if you read Christian Musician Magazine, which I hope you do because this is their conference, I did a series a while back on solo bass arranging, and I was using Angels We Have Heard on High as the example, and put it in the key of E. So the melody repeats that. Then the Gloria part. So the chord motion is basically you don't need to do a big old jazz reharmonization. 1 to 5, 1, right? And then the chorus, the Alleluia part, is basically 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, 6, 2, 5. Then start. So if you combine those, chorus, it's basically just knowing the notes that make up the chords. So a major chord is 1, 3, 5, right? Major 7, 1, 3, 5, 7. What's minor chord? 1 flat third 5. Minor 7. 1 flat third 5 flat 7, right? And then I tend to really like the sound, the tension that's introduced with major 7s. Where you got the 1, 3, 5, 7. If you sometimes, especially if you're down here, the chords get a little murky, right? But if I come up here an octave higher and I move that third up an octave, so it's like my 1, my 7, and my major third up on top, then it's like a lot more clarity, right? Separating the upper parts of the chord from the root by maybe an octave or so. But in addition, the 9 is a really cool. And then playing the major third against that. You get even more tension when you do the minor 9.
Is that called open voicing?
I don't know. Is it? Open voicing? I don't think of open voicing as that because I tend to think of open voicing as involving open strings, but maybe, I don't know, maybe I just don't know the terminology. Oh, well, there you go. There's a Heart of Worship, Matt Redman tune. When an ensemble plays that song, it's a great song. Is there anybody here, any singers here? Show of hands for if there's a singer here. You want to come up and sing the song? Come here for a second. Okay. Different treatments of the song can result in a really different statement. You know this song, by the way?
I'm not sure. Which
Heart of Worship?
part of worship?
Yeah.
Coming back to the heart
Yep.
of worship.
When the music fades, right? Okay. So imagine instead of the whole band playing this, you have a shaker, kind of like a, and then that shaker and just the bass. So it's like.
That will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. I'm looking deeper within to the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus.
Does that say something different? It conveys something different than a full band playing it, right? So, as bass players, I mean, there are moments where, by the way, thank you very much. Grace under pressure. There's certainly, whatever, the Trading My Sorrows thing. There aren't a whole lot of bass features in worship, but the bass is a beautiful instrument that you can employ in all sorts of different ways, And the more you develop your facility on the instrument and develop your musical sensibilities and sensitivity and can apply things with subtlety, I think there are all sorts of opportunities for there to be bass-related statements and input into the melodic and the harmonic aspect of the music, which is always fun. Questions about anything we've covered? Yes? Oh, yeah. This is not a capo. This is a fret wrap. You probably noticed when I did the Star Spangled Banner, there's a certain point where I pull this up and I go. Where it's basically, it's muting the strings. Many years ago, I was recording something and I was punching in a lick up here, and it was like I had other strings ringing, and it was a kind of a finger buster, and I was like, man, I just need to get something to do this so I can punch that lick. And I ended up getting like a sock and tying it on, and didn't work particularly well. Well, right around that time, I was flipping channels one time, and I came across the Jacksonville Jazz Festival. Before that even happened, I was flipping through Bass Player magazine, and you may actually remember this. In the back of Bass Player magazine, there was a company that was advertising. They were called, their product was called the Clean Axe. And it was this device that you bolt onto the headstock. It's like ka-chunk, and it rests against the strings. And I remember thinking, there's just got to be a less invasive way to do this, So shortly after that, I was looking at I was watching the Jacksonville Jazz Festival, flipping channels, and all of a sudden there's this bass player who did this crazy solo. And at the end of his solo, he flips this backflip, He's Victor Wooten. I'd never seen him before. But halfway through his solo, he pulled this hair scrunchie over this fingerboard, and it was like, that is brilliant. Hair scrunchie. So for years, I, as some of you maybe have done, would be in the drugstore, and I'm in the hair scrunchie aisle, and I'm there kind of going, I wonder if this is going to fit, and people are looking at me like, what's up, and it's like, I wonder if this is going to fit over the headstock and all that. Well, hair scrunchies that style of hair scrunchie kind of went out of style anyway. But in addition, they never really worked that well. So a while back, well, last year actually, I started working with a company called Groove Gear. And I use one of their hand carts that are designed for musicians and really, really great stuff. If you get a chance, go by groovegear.com. But when I was meeting with them and doing the photo shoot, Jay, the owner, they're all believers, by the way, it's really cool. But Jay was saying, hey, is there any other music-related product that you've always thought would be cool that isn't on the marketplace? And I said, well, this is going to sound a little weird, but I'm thinking like a better hair scrunchie. And he looks at me and he kind of starts smiling. He goes like this, and he pulls out this drawing of a prototype that he'd been thinking about. And it was basically this, and this is a little embarrassing because this one has been on my base for about a year and a half, and it's looking a little tattered, but basically it's neoprene and terry cloth and Velcro, and you don't have to try to get it to fit over your tuners. You can go like so, and you can either really clamp it down or you can make it, I actually have it on the loosest setting it'll do because I found that you can actually over-mute the strings and it'll affect the tone. But I basically just have it down there below the nut most of the time, and then when I need it, I could bring it up here, and it takes care of that sympathetic resonance. Some people actually use it, for actually playing, and it kind of, they use it as an effect. I understand that a lot of metal guitar players do that in Europe right now, which I'm not really sure what that would be. But yeah, suffice to say that there's different applications of it. For me, I use it as a mute for that part of the Star Spangled Banner, or if I'm recording and I'm just wanting to punch a lick and I don't want to worry about any strings ringing that are going to maybe ruin the take, then I could just, and then I'm done and I can move on. So very, very cool. It's called the Fret Wrap from Groove Gear, and I brought a few with me that are on my table. I think I'm down to about 3 sets. Each set comes with 3 different fret wraps. But so if you're interested, then you may want to go hit those up. But yeah, so that's the deal with that. Any other questions? Yes. What do you call a technique where you hit the string with your thumb and then flip it back up? Double thumbing. Yeah. I mentioned this in the last session, but just for the benefit of those that are joining us online, I have an instructional website that launched in March called artofgroove.com, and it's all my instructional resources, including my 60-lesson groove course from Music Dojo, my Grooving for Heaven DVDs, which is about 7.5 hours of material in itself, and many, many hours of HD streaming and download video that's me teaching a bunch of songs. So it's kind of like applying the technique from the musical concepts, applying them to actual music. So if you're interested in learning any of the stuff that we've talked about here or in any of the other sessions, I encourage you to drop by artofgroove.com. You can learn how to play Salvation is Here or Give 'Em Praise from Lincoln Brewster stuff, or my version of the Star Spangled Banner, or some of the more simpler tunes as well. But it's all there at Art of Groove, and it's very, very reasonably priced, much less expensive than a private instructor. But if you have a good private instructor in your area, by all means, I keep looking over there. That's the camera, I'm sorry. If you have a good private instructor in your area, then definitely I encourage you to study with that person. But if you don't have a good teacher in your area, or you want to study with me, then please join me at the Art of Groove. I did mention that, kind of, but I didn't mention the 10-year thing. Bruce Adolph with Christian Musician Magazine, everybody. One of my great friends. Yes, I've been writing for Christian Musician Magazine for actually the last 13 years, but who's counting? And the Christian Musician Summit is truly one of my favorite events to do of the year. It's obviously very fun hanging out with you guys, but there's just such a cool thing going on at this event, and it's an honor to be here. So thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, yeah, so I will be at my table in room 3 right after this, so come say hi. God bless you. Thanks again.